What if I told you that the entire retirement system was built on a lie? If that's true, how soon would you want to know the truth behind the facade of the lie? For decades, we've been told that if we just work hard enough, if we save diligently, and we invest in a 401k or some market-based investment, we'll be rewarded like a carrot at the end of a stick with a comfortable retirement at the age of 65. But look around. Is it actually working? I mean, today, here's some of the stats. 49% of the American middle class are set to retire at or near poverty. This is the middle class. These are the people that have done everything right. 4 out of 5 people will fail to meet their retirement needs, and 35% of Americans, they've just given up altogether on the concept of retirement. This isn't a system that is failing, it's a system that has already failed. And if you don't change how you're playing the game, you could spend your entire life, your entire youth, your days, your months, your years, your decades, and all of the dreams that you've saved up for the future, chasing something that will never come to fruition. So today in this video, we're going to look backwards so we can more effectively look forwards. We're going to talk about the history of retirement planning. We're going to talk about the flawed assumptions that are keeping most people trapped. And we're also going to talk about an alternative pathway to financial freedom, so you don't spend decades hoping and investing in a system that might not ever work for you. So first off, I want to welcome you to the Wealth Outside of Wall Street YouTube channel. My name is Ryan Lee, and the entire purpose of this channel is to empower you to rise up, take control of your money, and ultimately not wait for one day, but actually achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. So with that being said, if you're new here, welcome to the show. If you're a longtime viewer, thank you for your support. Make sure you like and subscribe, and even share this video with a friend, because friends, well, they don't let friends retire broke. So here's the reality, my friends. Most people assume that retirement is a natural part of life. That is just what you do when you get old enough. You work for 40 years, you save money, and then at some magical age, you just stop working and you enjoy the rest of your life. But have you ever stopped to ask, where did this idea, this concept of retirement actually come from? Because in reality, the concept of retirement as we know it today is actually a recent invention. It's relatively new. And because of the human tendency to suffer from recency bias, we believe that the concept of retirement has just always been there. But if you zoom out and you look at the full scope of human history, you'll see that retirement is the exception, definitely not the rule. Before the 1900s, just a little over 100 years ago, there was no such thing as retirement. And for the thousands of years previous to that, people just worked until they physically couldn't work anymore. If you were a farmer, a craftsman, and a merchant, you worked as long as you were able, and then when you couldn't work any longer, you relied on your family or your community to survive. There was no such thing as 401ks, no pensions, no concept of a work-free phase of life where you just relaxed and traveled the world. You either built wealth and security for yourself and you worked until you died, or you just depended on others. So where did the idea of retirement actually come from? The concept of retirement actually started early on in the Industrial Revolution. Companies needed a way to motivate workers, so they introduced the concept of pensions. The promise that if you worked long enough and hard enough and you gave your entire career to a company, then they would take care of you after your career was over through the rest of your life. It was this whole idea that if you worked long enough, you got the gold watch and a pension or a paycheck for life. And this concept actually worked for quite some time. People were excited, they were motivated, but the reality of it is people just didn't live long enough to make it a liability for most people. In fact, the average life expectancy when pensions started was about the age of 63. But by the 1930s, the government jumped in to help people who didn't have pensions with a government-sponsored pension in the form of Social Security. They added another safety net. Back then, Social Security kicked in at the age of 65, and as I mentioned, the average life expectancy was only 63. So the liability of Social Security was virtually nothing. And back when it started, there were over 40 working Americans for one Social Security recipient. So I want you to think about that for a moment. Whether it was designed intentionally this way or it was designed based on probability and math, the system was designed so that most people wouldn't even live long enough to collect the benefits of Social Security or a pension. But it motivated people to trade the best days, months, and years of their life working in a system so that one day they could live free. Now, I want you to fast forward to today, because people today aren't living until 63. They're living well into their 80s. But the system, it hasn't kept up. In 1940, like I said, there were 42 workers paying into the Social Security for every one person drawing on it. Today, that number has collapsed to less than 3 workers per one recipient, and that recipient is now receiving Social Security for 20 plus years. And then in the 1970s, the real problem, the real cracks in the foundation that define how modern day retirement planning works started to show up. companies realized that pensions were too expensive and it put too much burden on the company to sponsor a paycheck for life for workers who had worked with them. I mean, think about this. If a worker that you had paid to work with you for 40 years, then retired and lived for another 20 or 25 years, and you were responsible for a pension, that's a major liability on many companies. So in the early 1970s, companies started looking for a way to still attract quality talent, but to put the burden of retirement on the employee versus the employer. This is what introduced the concept of a 401k. Instead of guaranteeing you a paycheck for life in the form of a pension, companies instead handed you a savings plan wrapped in the concept of a 401k. They allowed you, working with the government, to defer your taxes, so it gave you a tax incentive to want to put money into it, and then they brought Wall Street into the game, and Wall Street gave you the promise of growing your money to a big enough balance to one day retire. Once companies did this, they were able to wash their hands and say, good luck, we'll put in a company-sponsored match if you contribute to it, and that's your retirement plan. Now here's the reality. For the first couple of decades, the 401k seemed like a great idea, and to be honest, my friends, it actually worked. From 1970 all the way to the year 2000, company after company after company after company went from pensions to 401ks. And ultimately what happened is so much money flooded into the market from 1970 to 2000 that the average rate of return was 14.7%. This is the golden age of retirement. If all you did, this is when the millionaire next door came about, if all you did is went to work, worked hard for 40 years and saved in the market and let 14.7% annualized returns compound your wealth, you could retire. The American dream was real for a brief 30-year period of time. But then reality started to set in. The dot-com crash of 2000 was the very first wake-up call that this rocket ship to the moon could not last forever. In between 2000 and 2002, the market plunged by 50%. Then the Great Recession of 2008, the S&P lost half of its value in a 14-month period of time. Between market volatility and Wall Street getting a little bit too greedy and charging more and more and more for the privilege of being in the market, and the government turning on the printing press at unprecedented levels, unleashing inflation, the concept of retirement has started to get further and further and further out of reach. The market is now like a roller coaster. It costs a lot to be in the market, and inflation is slowly destroying your wealth. And to top it all off, you deferred your biggest liability, taxes. Most people today are following a system that did in actuality work for a window of time, wondering why it's still not working today. But even this isn't the foundation of the retirement problem. I want to open up what the foundation of the retirement problem actually is, because this will help you see the game for what it is. The entire game of financial planning, the entire game of retirement is based on one word. And when you understand what this word is, you'll realize why there's so much apprehension, why there's so much anxiety around the concept of retirement. I want you to imagine sitting in front of a retirement planner, okay? And you've been working, you've been saving, you've been diligently putting money into your 401k, you've been watching the market go up and down, your company has been sponsoring and matching your contributions, and you have a decent sum of money. But you're asking the question in the back of your head, is it going to be enough? Now, the financial planner never answers that question for you of what enough actually is, but instead they ask you a bunch of questions that go a little something like this. What do you think the average rate of return of your market portfolio is going to be between now and when you retire? And when you retire, at the age of 65 until the age of 85 or 90, when you die, what do you think the rate of return that you're going to earn is? They're asking you to guess. Now, on top of that guess, they're asking you, how long do you expect to live? Well, how long did your parents live? How long do your aunts and uncles live? How long do your siblings live? Then they're asking you to guess how long your money needs to last. Then they're going to ask you to guess, well, what do you think taxes are going to be? What do you think inflation is going to be? Do you guess it's going to be 2%, 3%, or 5%? And based on all of these guesses, they come up with a model of what a confidence interval should be of how much income you can take from your guessed perceived balance of what your retirement account might actually look like. When you really understand this, you understand that the retirement model entirely is built on guessing. It's built on assumptions. And guesswork, my friends, is not a strategy. This is the concept of retirement. When you arrive at that age of 65, you're wondering, well, how long does my money need to last? I guessed I was going to live until the age of 85, but what if I live until age 90? Or I guessed I was going to live until the age of 85, but what if I die prematurely at 75 and I leave my dreams and my money on the table? This is the biggest challenge with traditional financial planning. is it's all based on guesswork, assumptions, and any one guess has a catastrophic impact on your financial plan. Now, I've kind of beat up and poked holes into the math of retirement planning, but I want you to consider this. The real problem with retirement planning isn't just the math, it's the philosophy. Retirement assumes that your best years, when you have the health, the vibrancy, the life, your kids, your youth, all of those things, you should spend all of that time working, and then your freedom, your dream should come last, after everything else has been sacrificed. I want you to think about that. The traditional plan says you should work for 30, 40, 50 years, doing something that you may not even enjoy just to pay the bills. You should put money aside that you can't touch at the very least until you're 59 and a half without a penalty, and then you should hope by the age of 65 you have enough money to finally stop working. But by then, you spent your best years working, your body is slowing down, and you've traded your time for dollars your entire life. What if instead you could reverse this model? What if you could actually achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less and actually have time to enjoy the wealth that you've accumulated? Because here's the truth. Financial freedom, it's not about age, it's about cash flow. And financial freedom isn't a destination like retirement where you wait for one day. Financial freedom is a lifestyle. When you understand the game of financial freedom, the entire model changes. You don't invest for one day. You don't try to build up a big pile of money and then wonder how long you're going to live and try to take as little out of that pile of money so it doesn't run out. You don't invest in things that you don't have control over. The game of financial freedom is so simple. You place your money in assets that have real tangible value that deliver income without you having to liquidate or sell the asset. That way you own the asset and you have a stream of cash flow. I want you to think about your retirement and your financial plan kind of like an ATM that never runs out of cash. You want that machine to simply pump out income for you every single month. If you can hit a point where you've got enough cash flow to cover your expenses, it doesn't really matter when you retire. And if you can do that, if you can build up an ATM machine, something that delivers cash flow every single month in excess of your expenses, you're free. And what that ultimately means, my friend, is you own your time. Now, likely what you'll realize when you own your time is you don't actually want to sit on the beach all of the days of your life. Now, likely you're going to spend more time in leisure, more time in travel, but the main purpose of wealth, the main purpose of money is to give you more freedom and more options with your greatest, most valuable resource that you have, your time. Instead of relying on Wall Street, instead of waiting for one day, what would your life look like if you took back control over your money and you built a passive income machine? That's what this channel focuses on. This channel focuses on how you can achieve financial freedom by removing yourself from the system that's designed to keep you trapped and broke and waiting for one day, and by taking control over your money and building a system that you control, that has invested your money in real assets that have real predictable outcomes. This allows you to achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. And the reason I say financial freedom is a lifestyle, not a destination, many times over the last decade of my life, I've decided intentionally I want to increase my expenses. My kids are getting older. I want to travel more frequently. I want to drive a nicer car. I want to live in a nicer home. But when I understand how to invest to create cash flow, all I do is I go back to my system. I invest in a way that increases the cash flow in excess of the increase in expenses I want to take, and I maintain a freedom lifestyle. This gives me more freedom and more options at every stage of my life. It allows me to work when I want to work. It allows me to work on what I want to work on, and it allows me to be present in the times of my life that I want to be present in. My friends, your greatest opportunity as an investor, someone who cares about your life and knows that money is a tool to build and live a life that matters, is to take control over your money. So my friends, this channel is dedicated to opening up your eyes, to creating awareness, and to giving you real life solutions of how you can rise up and live free. I hope that you join me on the next video where we'll talk more about the solution, the passive income machine. Watch some of the other videos on this channel and see what investing is, see how leverage works, see how cash flow and taxes all work together within a system that we call the passive income machine. The greatest opportunity you have, my friends, is to live the life that you were destined to live and that you're capable of living with the right financial IQ.